Okay, so I want to show you the sketchbook, but feel free to look away when it gets a bit cringy because honestly, there's a few embarrassing spreads that did really, really badly on socials, which I'm still a bit bitter about because I actually thought they were pretty good. This is my first full sketchbook tour, and I've already said too much in the first 40 seconds. So, a bit of context before we get into it. Before this book, I was doing realistic portraits from the Squid Game series. And look, I'm not going to pretend that was purely an artistic decision. I picked Squid Game because it was everywhere, everyone knew the faces, and I figured if I executed the drawings well enough, then maybe recognition would do half the work for me. And honestly, that worked. I rode the momentum for quite a while. But here's the thing about realism, right? It's impressive in a very specific but slightly hollow way. When you can copy a face accurately, people are like, oh, you're so talented, which feels great. But then no one ever says, oh, wow, what a fascinating idea, right? Because there is no idea. You're just a very skilled photocopier. And I really started feeling that way, especially when I'd see other artists making work that felt genuinely alive and creative. And I realized I wasn't building anything, I was more borrowing images. So, this sketchbook is the record of me trying to change that and failing a bit and trying again. All right, the cover page started September 2024 and just finished January 26th. The book itself is a Montmartre 150 GSM A5. I just grabbed it from a local stationery shop. It's not the most brilliant thing in the world. Lisa Simpson. I know starting with Lisa Simpson sounds like a casual choice, but I actually thought about that. She's one of the only characters in pop culture who gets to be visibly miserable without anyone trying to fix her or dismiss her. She's just allowed to feel things. And I wanted that energy for this book. Like, this is a space where I don't have to pretend everything I make is great or that every page has a point. Heavy or uncertain or being too much or too little is all fine, which, as you will see, was a useful thing to decide on page 1 because some of these pages are very much a lot. So the first few spreads are pretty much me easing myself into it. This cat is illustrative, a little bit charming. I think it's the artistic equivalent of a stretch before and low stakes. Next, it is a portrait of a photographic reference done in colored pencil. And I was very deliberate about not wanting to stylize this image. I just wanted to practice color pencil in portraiture and I really tried to accurately capture her smile. It's a very grounding page for me, real person, real face, no performances. I like how these two sit next to each other with the illustrative and the realistic just coexisting. Okay, a lot of these early pages are profiles in graphite. That is my safest medium, my safest angle as well. I actually read something recently about how profiles are kind of a psychological choice that avoids confrontation because the subject doesn't really meet the viewer's gaze head on, so you can study them without really being studied back, which is extremely on brand for where I was at this point. Technically competent, but emotionally unavailable. And the profile on the right is actually one of my all-time favorites in this book. But even that is just very careful, very controlled, and very much not taking any risks. Okay, so this is one of the cringe pages. I just drew this because food content was performing well on socials at the time, and I thought maybe I could get some of that. It's fine. It's a rough watercolor execution of a jar of Nutella. I have nothing meaningful to say about this except it exists, and I do have another Nutella drawing later in the sketchbook that I prefer over this one. Here it is. And this is from my Inktober 2024 pages. I just like to see the difference between the two art styles. Okay, another portrait, but this one's different though, okay? This is a face mid-laugh, so it's not some pretty composed smile. It's an actual laugh. It's a bit loud and awkward, maybe a bit unfiltered, because I didn't want all my faces to be behaving. I wanted some action, some life in them. So this is not so much a study of a face as it is a record of a moment, which sounds obvious, but it was genuinely a new thought for me at this point in the book. All right, there's a small architecture piece in here that I did on a date night. And I love this piece. I love that it's in this book because it's not trying to be anything. It's just me drawing while life was happening around me. So art more as a companion rather than a main event. And I did this in ink and watercolor. I think, presence is massively underrated nowadays, especially compared to ambition. So always just take a moment to be present and maybe capture what's around you. Okay, this spread was my attempt at the 100 Heads Challenge, which is meant to be done in 10 days. So 100 heads, 10 days, and you come out the other side with mileage and a mild hand injury. I did mine over 15 months across an entire sketchbook. And I'm not even going to promise that I've reached 100 hits, actually. We can keep a running tally at the bottom of the screen throughout the video and see how close I get, I guess. So this spread, I actually tried to mute the chaos of all of these expressions a bit by painting the background black. It didn't fully work, but I do like the range of expressions, yeah. All right, this one is more of a process page. It's really just a study of circular form and shadow. Yes, it's a messy page, but I think I'm okay with it because the thinking is quite visible in the study. All right, so after all the dense graphite there and the medicinal greens, I wanted to bring in a different color. So at this point, it was very shaky with anything that was not graphite pencil. So I built this chaotic marker background and I put a controlled composed figure at the center. He's facing upwards, he's locked on a fixed point, while everything around him is loud and agitated. Conceptually, at the time I was reading a lot of Michael Singer and material on non-duality, where the idea is just that chaos can exist around you, but you will remain centered. It doesn't have to live inside you. So you hold that center of peace. And this is basically just that concept made visual. And if I just flip over here, this was me trying to get out of my comfort zone a bit with some patterns and bold color in the background. But then I still kept the realism on the inside, right? So it's not really well integrated. It's like I was trying to have it both ways, just take a risk and then not fully commit to it, which for the record is also how I approach most things in life. So thematic consistency. If you look at these heads, I don't actually know why I put them together, but it does work, right? So you have this one person who's into it, posing for the camera, putting on a performance. And on the other side, you've got this guy watching the world with the energy of someone who had said yes to plans 2 weeks ago, and now it's today. Okay, this one is probably the most structurally mature page in the sketchbook, where I finally managed to break away from realism, and I flattened the face planes. I don't care if you can't see it, okay? You have to look closely. I really tried. I did some graphic simplification, and I feel like I stopped asking, can I draw this? And I started asking, what am I trying to say? So I did this full, cartoon spread, volume 24. It performed so badly on socials. And let me be honest about what I did next. I just pulled back. I just let the reaction or lack of reaction dictate my creative decisions. But I think if you've ever made something you were proud of and watched it get basically nothing, no validation, and then you found yourself retreating to the thing that used to work, then yeah, this page is for you. And I'm not proud of it, but I also think it's useful to show you instead of pretending it never happened. Okay, this is a really chilled color pencil and marker spread with a strawberry face. And then this portraiture is also from a photographic reference. I didn't think much about this one. I just wanted to enjoy the process of creating it. And I like that it's unperformative. So on this side, I was a bit more careful with the color pencils and the photo reference and the likeness. And the other side is a bit more playful. And the other space between them is pretty disjointed with this lazy filler pattern of flower shapes. I tried to stick a little flower chain in the middle, but it came apart. And these pages are already so poor quality that just did not work out well. Okay, this spread was me continuing consciously the 100 hits, but here I feel like something had clicked because each face on this spread has a label, right? So it's more about social roles and the masks that we have to wear. So for the first time, the realism is serving the idea rather than just proving that I can copy a face. So it's a turning point between look what I can do and look what I'm saying. Just running through the labels quickly, we have judgment and condemnation. So those two go together. And then on the inside, I've got the departed, the morbid. The departed was really popular among the Nips fans. Then the morbid, the awkwardly silent, the professional. And if you read those two together, the awkwardly silent professional, yeah, if you've ever sat in a meeting where one person hasn't spoken in 40 minutes but also has not left, you know exactly who that is. It's me every Monday, actually. And then Alicia Keys, the natural. All right. And here's the Nutella in ink again from 2024. Okay, the eggs and toast page was me testing alcohol markers for the first time. Extremely routine, but I needed to breathe between the heavier pages. Unfortunately, this is where I discovered that the sketchbook was fine for color pencils and graphite, but could not deal with markers. So at various places in the book, you'll see that I had to cover up, bleed through. I didn't plan this contrast on this page. I only noticed it after I finished both pages. So let me explain. The left side, you have a stack of eyes just watching, clinical, hyper-aware, doing absolutely nothing with what they see, observing, right? And then on the right side, you have mouths that are indicative of appetite, provocation, things that probably shouldn't be said. I didn't consciously decide on this contrast, right? But I do think that your subconscious leaks through into what you create, whether you invite it to or not. So looking at it now, it basically reads that I see everything and then I either say too much or I'm desperately trying not to. I love the graphic language backing it up though, with the sharp triangles and the neon gradients and the acidic palette. It's giving pop art agitation. Okay, this spread is algorithm maintenance and I'm not going to dress it up as anything else. We all know that absence or inconsistent content gets punished. So I chose a familiar, easy subject to stay connected. 5 cats and a little dog go peeking into the spread. And the orange cat over here is judging me. And honestly, fair enough. It's a palette cleanser, okay? Every sketchbook needs one. Okay, this is one of my favorites in the book. The first page that feels authored. It's not so much about destruction, but it's the moment right before you make a deliberate, irreversible choice and you have to accept whatever comes with it, right? So the water surrounding this flame in her mouth is the unavoidable consequence of burning down the bridge that's holding her above water, right? But on the bright side, if you do burn the bridges keeping you above water, you will at least have enough light to see where you're swimming to. So may the bridges I burn light the way. Okay, on this side, yes, I know you're going to say that I'm retreating back into the comfort zone. I know it looks like that. Let me justify this, right? So the intention was different here from the earlier ones. She's pulling a face, but look at her eyes. The gaze is completely controlled, right? It's not a side profile. This is straight up looking back at me, okay? And she's not being observed while pulling a face. She's pulling a face while she watches you watch her. So there's a flip in the power dynamic here. It's a stance that she's taken. It's not her trying to be funny. It's a stance. Okay. Someone asked me to draw Tom Holland, and I turned it into a spread about dual allegiance, the suit versus the person, responsibility versus play. I don't care much for this spread. I really don't think one is better than the other. I just wanted to show both existing at the same time. So this page was actually a loose one, originating again from my Inktober 2024 submission. The prompt was Trek, which is also a well-known bicycle brand. There's no implied narrative beyond motion itself. The bicycle is just rendered here as a machine in black ink, and it suggests the forward movement to keep going, right? Which is kind of the point, because that's the only reason it's pasted here, was for me to move forward in the sketchbook and to sustain momentum. And then on the other side of the spread is my first and last attempt at stippling with black ink fine liners and markers. I do not know why I thought it would be so easy to do stippling, but it was not. Anyways, conceptually, the image portrays that old phrase, see the worry in my eye, which people used to say, and it was supposed to, be a show of not caring, hence the script here, no worries. So I know it didn't land very well with the stippling, but my intention was to draw his eyes filled with worry to show that internal conflict where the phrase and the eyes don't agree. And it's just illustrative of those instances where we're forced to pretend we're okay even when we aren't. I'm sure everyone can relate to that. Okay, this is another exploratory urge to push away from realism and get back into the graphic language. I wanted to inject some color into the book, but I also wanted some edge. So I chose the Doberman and the skull rocking a punk hairstyle, which was meant to give off this sharp, unapproachable energy. But then the Doberman is loyal and vigilant, so she can just relax in the background and trust that she's being guarded. Okay, this page depicts a position that a lot of us know too well and just have to default to. Walk it off, keep moving, don't make a big deal, don't make a fuss, don't stop to process, you gotta just keep going. The phrase walk it off is actually really dismissive and it's kind of cruel. So I try to depict that here with the chucks on the left that are dripping and worn out, but still going as chucks do. And then the tattooed legs on the right with no face, no name, just a body that's been places and has to keep going whether it's celebrated or not. So the grit is really just not romanticized here. Here's a crowded collage spread that I know is very disjointed because I actually drew the portrait on the right months before I filled in the left page. So that's Felix from Stray Kids. That was a viewer request. And then I came back around to close out the other side with some stylized framed faces. Okay, the rose was a quick piece. I'm genuinely not a flowers as a subject person, but I have been curious about it because people respond to it. So I need to make a note of that for the next sketchbook. And the main piece on this spread is actually this side about compliance disguised as rebellion. So the subject has a cigarette and that automatically looks like a rebel or resistance, but the word underneath says obey, right? So if you look at her expression, it's very vacant and it's about falling for false advertising and societal pressure. It's about addiction that's framed as identity. So I think for a lot of people, choosing the path of least resistance and feeding into those societal norms and pressures is a lot easier to do than resisting them. And it's so easy to fall into that you do it so thoroughly and you stop noticing that you're even doing it. Okay, this drawing was the last thing I made before I stopped for 5 months. I was trying to revive the Squid Game momentum one more time. One more recognizable face, one more character. Spoiler alert, it did not work. So after this drawing, I put the book down, but not for that reason. I'd actually been reading The 12-Week Year by Brian Moran, which is basically a book arguing that you should treat every 12 weeks like a year. You pick one focal area and you give it everything. So with that permission to narrow focus, I switched gears and gym took over, and then my PMP exam took over, and I felt incredibly guilty, not about losing skill. Like, I knew the skill would come back, but what scared me was losing momentum. I genuinely believed that if I stopped pushing, everything I'd built would just collapse, but it didn't, and I came back having passed my exam and in the best physical shape I had been in years. And I realized something important at this point. The sketchbook wasn't really so much proof of consistency, but it was proof of my return. So coming back was terrifying. I had full-blown imposter syndrome. I procrastinated for so long that I moved house, set up an entire studio in the spare room, assembled a desk. I decorated the space from a lot of pieces off Temu. I did anything except actually open this book. So when I did eventually sit down to draw, I opted for a safe approach. I cheated a bit and I took a few old alcohol marker drawings that I'd done on watercolor paper and I cut them out and I stuck them down in here in an attempt to create a cohesive spread. So we've got tomatoes, kiwis, faces, milkshakes. Yeah, I think it's obvious I was just warming up, but I do actually like the mix of colors in this jumble of ideas. The next page is just a continuation of that, a basset hound with a goldfish and a kiwi. Look, I had to start somewhere. Call it chaotic cute, I guess. Then there's this smile, which was the first thing I actually drew after the 5-month-long break. It was a really difficult perspective to draw, this top-down, foreshortened view with the compressed face planes, and it's not translating well spatially, if I'm being honest, but I think the gesture is unmistakable, right? You can see that someone is forcing their mouths open to show their girl, so it's not a joyful smile at all. And that discomfort and the ink and the distortion as a first choice gave me zero safety net, but I'm happy to have gotten through it. I just think if I do this type of perspective again, I would push the skull mass larger, maybe pull the chin further back and exaggerate the hands more relative to the face. Okay, this spread is about non-resistance. The woman floating here is not doing any work to stay afloat. She's just in a state of letting go, and in letting go, the water supports her. And the duck on the other page is a different version of the same idea. So instead of being embraced by the water off a duck's back is about not engaging with what doesn't serve you. The duck doesn't have to perform resilience, right? It's just intrinsic to its nature. And this spread is really just to remind me that not everything requires confrontation and to protect my peace above my pride. Both of these pages were done in watercolor and gouache, and I think it adds a nice element of blue, teal, and green to the book. This next page is about expectation more than outcome. The reference to conformity gate is that Stranger Things conspiracy, if you recall. It isn't just about fandom trivia, right? It's about this human impulse to believe that something hidden must exist when an ending disappoints us. That need for continuation, and we just refuse to accept closure. And for those who aren't familiar with the law, people just wanted there to be a hidden episode. They needed some kind of meaning to exist beyond the ending that we received. Apart from that, I think it's a strong conceptual page, and the multiple elements actually do cohere this time. And these are all actually icons from the show itself, so that does help. Okay, the Caroline collage. This page came from a social media trend where you search random Pinterest keywords and you draw whatever comes up first. So it was character, animal, drink, flower, food, and doodle. I didn't have to think about the concept at all, so that was the freedom I needed, because now I could focus on the stylization, the composition, the color relationships. This spread is watercolor and the negative space, and it's probably my favorite piece in the sketchbook. All right, this one is two faces with very extreme angry expressions. Um, it's black ink and marker on a watered down sort of pinkish background. And the pink was deliberate. Just I wanted to reframe the aggression in the expressions into something that is more like vulnerability under the surface, right? So you have the one face that's clenched with the teeth showing. It's almost like she's imploding. And the other has the throat open and she's screaming outwards and she's more exploding. So it's two completely different responses to the same feeling of being misunderstood. Okay. So each figure is shouting in a sense, but they are both shouting alone into a black void that's meant to isolate them. So there's no connection, just parallel frustration. I think it's just really what it feels like when meaning fractures between people and there's just no way left to bridge it. Okay, the final spread is 2 pieces from Inktober 2024 again that I pasted in to close the book. I'll be honest, they are here partly because they're technically strong and partly because I wanted to end on a high note and mostly because I was lazy at this point and I wanted to be done with it. But they are curated in a way that the rest of the book is not. But they were also genuinely my favorite pieces from that challenge. So curated, but earned. So the tally, we got to 41 out of 100 heads across 15, 16 months in one sketchbook. You know what? I am honestly fine with that. Here is the thing I want to leave you with, okay? This sketchbook doesn't prove that I'm consistent, right? But it does prove that I came back. So if you've put something down that used to matter to you, this isn't your permission to quit. It's your permission and a request for you to return differently than you left. So I'll see you in the next sketchbook. And please do subscribe if you want to be there when I open it.